To kick us off, we have Mr. Samir Hafif. So he's a monitoring, evaluation, and learning specialist, and he focuses on digital technology for climate resilience and adaptation at GSMA. So the second speaker is Mr. Tim Leslie. He's an evaluator. He has an evaluation consultancy based in the UK, and he's really passionate about supporting organizations to create positive environmental and social change by actually empowering them to learn, improve, and make strategic informed decisions. And lastly, the third speaker is Mr. Mudupi Matsumunyane. He's a distinguished M&E specialist. He has done a lot of work for multilateral organizations like your World Bank, UNDP, and others. So without further ado, I think I'll just briefly reiterate and reintroduce some of the themes that we'll be focusing on this particular theme. So I think the first theme regarding this session, we really want to focus on how must evaluation evolve to actually meet future needs. We'll consider the transformative potential of AI in real data analysis and the imperative shift towards more participatory and adaptive evaluation models. Secondly, we'll look at what cutting-edge approaches, methods, and tools do we actually need to keep evaluations relevant. And lastly, and the third one is how can evaluation effectively support concrete climate action and ensure a truly just transition. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again and say thank you so much for many of you. I know you are joining from across the world. So I'll just say thank you to the panelists. I'll pass over the mic to Samim Hafif to walk us through to his presentation, and we'll have the Q&A session at the end. There's a feature there. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Kipti, and thank you for having me join today. So my name is Samir Hafiz. I'm the Climate Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning Manager at GSMA Mobile for Development, and I work within the Climate Tech program. So I'm really excited to be sharing some of our insights that we gathered through our work supporting climate innovation across LMICs, and specifically looking at how AI is being used by our grantees and how we are evaluating the impact of this. So we'll look at a few real-world case studies from our climate tech portfolio and explore both the promise and the practicalities of deploying AI for climate action. And I'll try to talk through some of the emerging methods that we've been using to evaluate these initiatives. Okay, so for those of you that might not know GSMA too well, we are an industry association representing the mobile industry and the communications companies in the broader ecosystem. So we are a global organization, and we advocate for and convene the industry at regular events across the globe. And we are really proud to be the first sector to commit to the UN SDGs and leading the industry to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And within GSMA, I work for its foundation arm, so GSMA Mobile for Development. We work with development and donor partners to support and promote digitalization of development in low and middle income countries. So some of our key themes include climate adaptation and resilience, digital financial inclusion, and the use of mobile in humanitarian contexts, and also increasingly emerging technologies, especially AI for impact. So at GSMA Mobile for Development, we have our climate tech program, and we have a climate thematic projects across our portfolio, focused on how digital innovation can tackle challenges posed by climate change and the risks associated with them. So far, our work has reached over 51 million people, with more than 13 million directly supported to adapt to climate impacts. And these include access to climate smart agriculture advice, early warning systems, and clean energy services. To make this possible, we've awarded 8.6 million in grants to local innovators. And crucially, these grants have gone on to raise an additional 34 million follow-on investment. So the challenge we face is clear. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues of our time, and LMIC's low-middle income countries are disproportionately affected. The impacts are systematic: floods, droughts, and food insecurity, and they require really swift, scalable action. So we at GSMA see that there's a lot of opportunity lying in digital technology. So mobile and AI-powered solutions are uniquely positioned to help not only reduce emissions, but also build resilience and protect ecosystems, particularly in communities exposed to climate stress. So our approach is threefold. We research what works by generating evidence and insights. We catalyze partnerships between innovators and mobile operators and governments. And we fund and support high impact solutions that address both climate mitigation and adaptation. So this is how we're driving climate action, by unlocking the potential of digital tools that protect lives, livelihoods, and ecosystems at scale. So AI has enormous potential to support climate action in LMICs. So we're already seeing real world results, particularly through predictive AI, which is helping with crop forecasting, resource optimization, and early warning systems. At the same time, we need to balance innovation with energy efficiency. So AI's carbon footprint is a growing concern, especially as demand for computational power rises. Generative AI remains underused in Africa, largely due to a lack of local language data and infrastructure gaps. This highlights the need for more inclusive data ecosystems. And finally, collaboration is key, we've noted. We need global partnerships and responsible AI standards to ensure that AI solutions are not only effective, but ethical and equitable. So especially for the most climate vulnerable communities. So I'm just going to very quickly outline three case studies from our portfolio. So one is Crop2Cash. Crop2Cash is a Nigerian agri-tech company that supports smallholder farmers through a suite of digital tools, including financial services, climate smart advisory, and access to inputs. And with GSMA support, they supported close to 1,400 farmers in accessing loans and insurance. The innovation lies in how AI powers the solution. So mechanization hubs are strategically located using crop and socioeconomic data. The AI-driven IVR system, now live in 5 local languages, gives farmers 24/7 agricultural advice, so no internet or smartphone required. This helps bridge the gap left by a shortage of extension agents, especially in rural Nigeria. And the impact of this has been substantial. Farmers using Crop2Cash reported a 70% increase in income, and 86% said that the yields improved thanks to access to better quality and climate resilience inputs from Crop2Cash. The solution directly supports Nigeria's national AI strategy and is already operating in 16 countries across the world. It shows what's possible when AI is applied not just for efficiency, but also for real resilience in agriculture and livelihoods. The next example is Comunidad. So Comunidad is a startup working in the Philippines where vulnerability to typhoons, floods, and other natural hazards makes disaster risk reduction a high priority. So they are using AI to strengthen early warning systems through improved weather predictions, hazard mapping, real-time detection, and damage assessments. So this kind of intelligence helps governments and communities respond faster and more effectively. One of their standout innovations, you could see with this snapshot of their app, is Curbeat. And this is an AI-powered early warning hub. It features real-time location tracking, an AI chatbot for safety guidance, and quick access to emergency services. So all designed to keep people safe before, during, and after a crisis. And by integrating AI, Comunidad has been able to expand its features and really scale up its reach, showing how digital solutions can enhance resilience, not just through better data, but through timely life-saving action on the ground. And then the last example I'll share with you is Hello Tractor. Hello Tractor is based in Nigeria. They are transforming how smallholder farmers access equipment through a shared economy model, connecting them to tractor owners via mobile app and GPS-enabled fleet management. And with GSMA support, they developed a machine learning powered demand forecasting model to predict peak tractor demand across the year, helping to really match up resources with need more efficiently. They also provide a full package from formal financing to climate smart advisory and a digital marketplace. So what's the result been? Farmers using Hello Tractor have seen up to 70% increase in income and greater yields. They are now operating in 16 countries with over 4,500 tractors and serving now over 1 million farms. So AI is really helping them to scale up and further optimize their service delivery, reducing inefficiencies and building resilience for farmers to climate shocks. So how are we evaluating these technologies or AI as well? The different digital tools for climate action that are used across our portfolio are evaluated in a range of ways. So some of our core methods, we use structured surveys via phone or in person to capture user experiences and perceptions. This gives us a real foundational understanding of how climate-focused interventions are reaching and benefiting communities. We conduct project-level environmental evaluations, sometimes with baseline and endline data, and this helps us to quantify outcomes like emission reduction, land restoration, or resource use efficiency. And some of the exploratory methods, so AI-driven models help estimate long-term outcomes like emissions saved or crop yields based on early user data, and this allows us to anticipate impact before it fully materializes. There's AI process satellite imagery and spatial data to monitor environmental changes over time, ideal for assessing land use, forest cover, and climate adaptation at scale. So we've got a couple of grantees in our fund round who are using AI to process satellite imagery for soil health. So a lot of their data can also be used for evaluative purposes. Then we track real-time interactions on digital platforms such as advisory tool usage or service uptake. This allows us to measure actual behavior change across users. So when is peak usage? Who is using certain services? Areas where we are more keen to explore further, so natural language processing that can scan and summarize large volumes of text and voice data. So we haven't applied this yet, but we understand that it could help us better understand user sentiment and emerging issues at scale in the future. Also, AI-powered anomaly detection could really help identify changes in usage or service disruption, allowing for quicker responses. And this, again, isn't an area that we've explored yet, but we are very interested. However, we recognize that the early stage startups that we are supporting might not have the mature data systems required for this. And then lastly, AI for learning and program design. We know that there's other efforts from organizations like UNDP and WFP who are using AI to extract programmatic learning and inform program design. So that's also a valuable direction for really strengthening adaptive learning and program design for GSMA going forward. But yeah, that is it for my presentation. Thank you for your time. So at GSMA, we believe that AI can play a meaningful role in climate resilience, and if we get the foundations right. So if you'd like to explore our case studies further, you can scan the QR code here and access a full our report on climate tech horizons. And I will hand over now to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Samir. Indeed, you are right. You are right. I think one of the things that can really be taken away from the presentation, I feel like, AI is really unused, especially in the African continent. So I think it's time, like you just like you were saying, it's time to form like strategic partnerships and collaboration so that we can actually, use AI, especially when it comes to mainstreaming issues of, climate evaluations and others. So thank you so much for the nice presentation and for the case studies. And attendees, you're welcome to pose some of the questions in the Q&A session. With that, I would like to welcome the next speaker, Mr. Tim Leslie, to the stage. Thank you so much.
So, as Kibiti already said, my name is Tim Leslie. I'm the founder of Delphi Collective. For the last 5 years, I've been practicing monitoring evaluation in South Africa. And today I would like to talk to you about a particular case study, which I think is relevant to this conversation, which comes from an evaluation that I conducted during my time at Data Innovators. Myself and 2 colleagues published a paper in the Evaluation Matters journal. Well, it's been accepted, but it hasn't really been published yet. Still waiting for that. On 2 big case studies that we conducted on international international development that we conducted remotely. And I would like to talk to you about one of these case studies. So just a little bit of background. So we all know that participatory methods have been widely promoted in international development, and that's been happening for some time. And then COVID-19 put us in the position where we needed to accelerate the use of participatory methods, as well as conducting evaluations remotely. But since that time, there's actually very little evidence in the literature explaining how participatory and collaborative methods are being used by evaluators. And that formed the backbone of our research, and I'll explain why that's relevant. At the same time, we've seen a huge shift in the use of big tech in interventions and international developments, including AI, machine learning, etc. And we are now at a stage where we need to consider this question: how can large international development programs be evaluated remotely through collaboration and participation, and should they be? So what I'd like to discuss with you is a case study. So this case study was an evaluation that we did spanning about 24 months ago, but it occurred over almost a year. We evaluated the development of labeled data sets for machine learning to solve urgent challenges in the Global South. A major part of this work was work in agriculture and climate. So Lacuna provides funding to grantees that use that funding to develop data sets that are used for machine learning. So in this evaluation, we needed to understand the extent to which data sets have been enabled. We needed to understand what emerging outcomes were occurring at this midline stage, and to examine challenges and provide recommendations for improvement. So there was a big focus here on learning. But the big challenge was that we were conducting this evaluation entirely remotely, or almost entirely. I'll get to that just now. So there were these main methods that we used to conduct this evaluation in a way that would promote stakeholder engagement, that would involve participation from grantees, and that would really have learning at its center. So on the left-hand side, you can see that you have the methods in green. So we conducted a desktop review. We conducted stakeholder engagements with the implementation team. We conducted online interviews with grantees, and we also conducted bellwether interviews with experts in the field, in academia at universities mostly. And then we also conducted surveys of the users of these data sets. So in other words, the recipients or the would-be beneficiaries, as well as the grantees themselves. This was complicated because the work was technical. So the majority of the grantees were scientists. They were doing highly complex work. They were using data sets for a range of disciplines within climate and agriculture, as well as health. And we needed to get to grips with how to contend with that complexity and at the same time generate evidence that is usable and promoted learning. So to deal with the fact that we were conducting this work on a virtual basis, we decided to use 3 learning loops. So firstly, we collected the data using those methods on the left-hand side. Then we developed learning briefs that would be about 8 to 10 pages long, which would describe some of the main findings that we were getting. And then we would conduct sense-making workshops whereby we would present this data and gain insights from the primary intended users. They would use that as learning, and that would go back into decision-making. Effectively, we did this learning loop 3 times, once sort of 2 or 3 months into data collection, and then spanning around the last loop, which I think was presented around 9 months later. Okay, so like I said, we conducted a learning brief, and this really helped with getting more engagement into the results of our findings, our very preliminary findings, and getting more interest from both the grantees as well as the various primary intended users. So Lacuna had a board, they had a steering committee, and they also had a technical advisory panel. Then we conducted a sense-making workshop where we presented the findings, preliminary findings. And each sense-making workshop was geared towards answering very specific evaluation questions based on the data that we had available. Then throughout the presentation, we actually asked the attendees what actually stands out for them, what insights that they can glean from this, that they could offer us to help us with the evaluation, and also to think about what are the gaps that could help guide us. At the same time, we also wanted to understand from them what stands out, what's different, what are you learning from this process that you didn't really understand or know about before. And then we asked them to map those various aspects onto the mural board, which they all had access to, and they contributed towards that in like little 15-minute gaps between presentations. Then right at the end, we would have a big, long discussion about this, about what stands out for them, about what the gaps are, and what are the major themes that are emerging from this data. And all of this was geared towards enhancing the utilization or use of the evidence. And then, of course, the learning briefs and the sense-making actually completely changed the evaluation. They decided that they had more questions than what they had answers to, and that they needed more engagement with the grantees. And so they organized the grantee convening session for us, where we participated in person to come out with bespoke recommendations or solutions from their perspective. So we conducted this workshop whereby we asked them what is working well and what is not working well and why, for various themes that the evaluation needed to address. Then we asked them to vote for what they would like to reimagine most for improvements, and they placed a vote on the pink sticky notes based on what they thought should be reimagined most. So they had 1 vote per theme. And then we gave them time, it was more than half an hour, it was more like 45 minutes, to come up with a solution for what they would like to reimagine most. And this was incorporated into the evaluation report as part of the recommendations. Okay, so lastly, just in conclusion, the sense-making and learning briefs encourage buy-in. The way that we were able to engage with the evidence and present it and engage with the grantees to understand the complexity meant that the findings had use from beginning to end. And that was really important for conveying the various technical aspects that the grantees were involved with. We also gave the grantees a chance to contribute meaningfully to the process. And overall, this meant that they actually ended up creating a community of practice, because one of the findings was that they felt they were very alone in their own research process. The reason why I've spoken so much in this presentation about this participatory approach really is because we talk a lot about AI, we talk a lot about the technical aspects of really of developments in tech and how that's either used in international developments or in evaluations. But what this piece of evaluation, what this case study actually illustrated to us, one of our major learnings was actually the importance of human-to-human communication and interaction in mediating international developments, whilst also using machine learning and big tech to try to address big international development challenges. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim, for an insightful presentation. I think from your presentation, I can really, tell and learn that indeed it is very important for learning. I like that you guys were getting like feedbacks from the grantees or the beneficiaries. So I think it's really befitting to actually enhance, the digitalization processes, especially in the processes of evidence, evidence. We always talk about evidence in evaluation. So I think that really is befitting. So thank you so much for the nice presentation. So without wasting so much time, I'll just pass it next to the next presenter and the last one, who is Mr. Mudupi. Please take it away, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. I'm happy to be here. Just please give me a moment to share my screen. So thank you so much and good afternoon to all you colleagues. So my name is Mulupi Matsumiyane. I am a monetary and evaluation practitioner with over 15 years of experience across more than 19 African countries, and I've worked with governments, multilateral organizations, and civil society. So I'm currently completing a PhD in public policy evaluation at the University of Pretoria, with a research focus on evaluation capacity building within South Africa's Department of Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation. So in my career, I've had the privilege of supporting national and regional evaluation systems, and I've contributed to evaluations in diverse sectors from inclusive growth and climate resilience to public service reform. And I'm currently serving as a national advisory consultant for the UN in South Africa. So I'm also a former board member of the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association. And today I look forward to engaging with you on the intersection of AI, climate justice, and evaluation, particularly as well from a Made in Africa lens or perspective. Thank you. So as the previous presenter said earlier, Samir, he said that he alluded to the fact that Africa is one of the most climate vulnerable regions in the world. And of course, we are witnessing increasingly frequent and severe droughts, floods, and other extreme weather events. And we realize that this impacts disproportionately affect the poorest and most marginalized communities. So in response, many African countries are beginning to embed just transition principles in the climate and development policies. And this approach insists that the shift to low carbon, climate resilient economies must be fair and inclusive. So take, for example, South Africa as an example. It has indeed led a way by developing a justice-centered climate framework, which asks the key evaluative question: who benefits? So this essentially centers equity in every intervention that's related to climate issues, whether it's from energy reform, land use, or adaptation financing. So evaluation plays a very central role in this transformation because it's essentially not just about tracking outputs, but essentially it's about asking, are we making fair progress? Are the benefits shared equitably? Are vulnerable groups being left behind? So in terms of that, we have three themes that we'll be quickly going through in this presentation. So the first centers around how evaluations must then evolve. currently, we must, I think, from a conceptual understanding, we must understand as well that and note that JET. So much. So apologies for that again, dear colleagues. So I think philosophically and conceptually, we must also acknowledge that this just energy transition is not value free. And we must, of course, acknowledge that these frameworks, these just energy frameworks, are influenced by global north priorities, which speak to about carbon neutrality, rapid decarbonization, and may oftentimes not align with Africa's developmental realities, such as the energy poverty we see, informality, and limited infrastructure. So the assumption that fossil fuel divestment should be immediate can, if not done carefully, can ignore Africa's current reliance on such sources for industrialization and basic services. Well, notwithstanding, one of the most significant shifts we've witnessed is the growing use of AI and real-time data in systems in evaluation. In particular, for example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw how crucial it was to collect and interpret data rapidly, sometimes in real time, to guide immediate responses and policy decisions. From my experience, currently, there's an initiative that I evaluated that was done by the UN, speaking to essentially evaluating how healthy rivers are. And it was piloted in Limpopo, wherein citizens were able to guide, to assess the quality of the waters in their rivers. So in essence, citizens were becoming evaluators or researchers that they could now feed real-time data concerning how the rivers' health, and if rivers are being polluted, etc., to some center somewhere. So that was kind of like also a paradigm shift as to how we have generally conceptualized evaluations and research, wherein you'd find that so-called experts will be the ones who would be collecting data and making decisions pertaining to, for example, interventions such as how healthy rivers are, etc. All right, the second theme, in fact, still related to how evaluations might be evolved, we propose that there are many adaptive and principle-based frameworks that one needs to consider, especially considering that in many African contexts, evaluation frameworks are moving from rigid, one-size-fits-all models to adaptive systems that can evolve in response to climate, technological, and political changes. So, of course, the good example that we can cite is South Africa's Just Transition M&E framework, which is explicitly principles-based and ecosystems-oriented. In essence, it seeks to avoid a centralized top-down approach to how M&E is done. But instead, similar to example that I cited earlier, it enables collaboration across stakeholders from government to civil society, and it's essentially structured to adjust dynamically as the transition unfolds. And this approach is not completely unique, because across the continent, you see countries like Kenya, Nigeria, and Rwanda adopting flexible evaluation strategies to cope with uncertainty and fast and rapidly changing context, especially, for example, in areas like agri, energy access, and digital infrastructure. So the Brooks Institute, of course, also highlights the fact that 36 out of about 54 African countries have now passed data protection laws, which of course create the legal foundations for responsible AI integration in evaluation systems. So this is critical for trust and accountability. I'm so, you guys are really missing out, and I'm so saddened that these slides are not appearing. But I will move on for the sake of time as well to the second theme. So there was quite some issues as well that we wanted to touch on in the first theme. But for the sake of time, I will move on to the second theme, which speaks to the approaches methods and tools now that we can utilize. So we can now turn to AI-driven analytics, which is a frontier area that is transforming climate evaluation. So you find in many African contexts like Lesotho's mountain-based water systems or South Africa's urban energy transition, data is often scarce, delayed, or fragmented. Yet, however, notwithstanding, we find that machine learning and predictive analytics now allow us to generate valuable insights even from these low data terrains or environments. For example, we see a potential wherein generative AI models can simulate what if policy scenarios that can help policymakers test the long-term impacts of, for example, shifting subsidies from fossil fuels to solar. And we find very, very encouraging that these tools are being trialed in countries like Kenya and Rwanda to forecast localized drought risks and link them to early warning systems for community resilience planning. So essentially, the real power lies in combining AI predictions with local knowledge, what farmers know about soil patterns or what informal recyclers understand about material flows in their cities. So from a made in Africa perspective, we are saying that there's local knowledge that we have, there's communities have knowledge that needs to as well be harnessed towards essentially solving their problems, not somebody coming from the outside coming to tell them how to solve the challenges that they face without not having the adequate context of their situation. So I'll move on. There were some themes that we wanted to cover within, sub-themes that we wanted to cover within these approaches and methods, but for the sake of time, I'll just rush into the last theme, which is then how do we...
So to interject, so I think you could carry on because we still have a bit of time because I think you are the last speaker. So don't hesitate, you can go on and expand wherever you wanted to say. So no worries about the time, we're still on time, I think so.
All right, no, thank you so much, Kibit. Okay, so in terms of the sub-theme, then we find that one of the areas that needs to be perhaps looked at is how do we build evaluator capacity then to embrace those particular sub-themes that we have highlighted earlier. So, and in terms of dealing with this, with building these evaluator capacities, we are specifically looking at young emerging evaluators. So this is a serious and urgent challenge in this area of AI and climate complexity. How do we build evaluators' capacities? So the shift from traditional methods of doing evaluation to AI-powered data-sensitive evaluation systems means that we need what some would call a differently trained M&E practitioner. So fortunately, several African-led initiatives are rising to the occasion. For instance, we have SAMIA, South African Monitoring and Evaluation Association's Young Emerging Evaluator Program in South Africa, which equips young evaluators with skills in digital tools, participatory methods, and policy engagement. So the one other institution that's leading the front is Clear Africa, which has launched regional capacity strengthening workshops on data governance, ethics, and emerging technologies. So in essence, the paradigm shift occurs wherein young African trained emerging evaluators are not just passive recipients, but they are co-creators. So global platforms as well, like Eval Youth and Twendembele, they're doing great work because they are also enabling peer exchanges, hackathons, and online communities where young evaluators build networks and lead on innovation. So by strengthening the capacities of these YEEs, we are not just preparing for future evaluations, but we are essentially redefining what inclusive African-led evaluation looks like. So now we move on to peer learning and support systems. So we are still within the second theme of approaches and methods and tools that we can utilize. So as evaluation becomes more technology driven and data intensive, collaboration and peer learning become essential to keep pace with innovation and change. So in South Africa, SAMIA plays a catalytic role. You'll find me speaking a lot of SAMIA because as well, I am a former board member of SAMIA, and I worked a lot in terms of the entrenching evaluation in the local government sphere. So SAMIA essentially seeks to promote capacity strengthening through technical workshops, as we illustrated earlier, mentorship, providing mentorship for emerging evaluators, and the creations of communities of practice to exchange methods and troubleshoot real-world evaluation challenges. The penultimate area that needs to be considered in terms of supporting climate action and just transition, which is the last theme, would be how do we entrench AI for policy tracking and accountability. There's no doubt that AI-powered tools are emerging as effective mechanisms for tracking climate policy implementation and ensuring government accountability. Earlier, we showed that 36 out of 54 countries in Africa have promulgated data protection laws. So at least the infrastructure and the foundation has been laid. So in terms of harnessing these AI-powered tools, one major application that is currently gaining a lot of traction is natural language processing, which can scan vast volumes of government policy documents, provide legislative updates, media reports and speeches. It can deal and synthesize can synthesize budget documents. The list goes on and on. So these tools can automatically flag discrepancies between stated climate goals and actual actions, such as whether countries are progressing on their nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement. So practical examples where this can be used include utilizing them to develop carbon tracking dashboards that can monitor emissions in real time. For example, also providing mobile applications that can provide citizens with visual updates on local air quality or the quality of their rivers, as we illustrated earlier. So now, in terms of how can we support climate action and a just transition as evaluators? Of course, our work entails assessing social and economic impacts. For example, South Africa's Just Transition Framework, it explicitly calls for accessing employment, training, and community benefits to ensure that the cost and benefits of the just energy transition are shared fairly. So using AI, one could simulate how a new policy, for example, implementation of a carbon tax, how can this affect electricity prices and then predict impacts on low-income households? I think colleagues would be aware of the economic situation in South Africa. I mean, the triple challenges we face: high unemployment, poverty, etc. So evaluations could then include such predictive analysis to ensure that policies do not inadvertently harm vulnerable groups. I think South Africa is also a leader in terms of this, in terms of also providing courses that center or utilize or help evaluators to be more future oriented, because evaluation as we know it is more looking at the past, what has happened, but it does not really include much predictive analysis. We do not usually include much predictive analysis in our evaluations. So the Stellenbosch Business School has also offered a course, a postgraduate diploma in future studies. So I think we should, as evaluators, consider as well not being retrospective, but also being proactive in how we inform or we analyze the interventions that are there. That is one particular area. And ladies and gentlemen, let me stop there because I see I've gone way beyond way beyond the time I was allocated. Just to say thank you so much, and yeah, hope to
No worries at all, Mr. Mudupi. We're actually enjoying it. We wish you could continue, but thank you so much. And let me also relay a huge apologies to the attendees for not being able to see this particular presentation. So I think that just brings us to the end. And I think from your presentation, Mr. Mudupi, you alluded to the idea of Africanism. I mean, you stated that it's time that evaluations must actually, reflect the local context, our knowledges, the values. So I think there's really a need to actually harness that, and I think Samia is one way that they're actually doing in capacitating the young and emerging evaluators into this area. And as we all know it, AI and just transition is something that is like is fairly new in the field, but I think you have really touched so much on it. I mean, you have mentioned things about inclusive led African evaluations. As it were, we know that back in the days, our qualified evaluators in the African continent, they used to just remain just merely data collectors, while our northern counterparts, they actually become like lead into evaluating these climate evaluations. So I think I really like what you have really mentioned about that idea of Africanism. And you also mentioned the issue of a study that you have really looked for, about where you talked about 54 countries, where you said about 36 of them have actually adopted, data protection policies. I think that is really a good step towards, mainstreaming this kind of evaluations. So I think for now, ladies and gentlemen, we still have 30 minutes to go. So the Q&A feature is actually open, so you guys are welcome to pose some of the questions. If you want to pose questions based on the specific themes or the case studies that the presenters have actually presented, you're welcome to do so. So in the meantime, I did forecast that this session would not be more than 1 hour, 30 minutes. So we did have some of the brief questions that we can do in order to actually, promote, a interactive session. So I'll just pose some few questions to our speakers. So Samir, your work at GSMA, I know you support climate tech startups in Africa and Asia with Mel Guidance. So I just wanted to find out, how do you see these startups utilizing AI in their climate resilience and adaptation efforts? And what evaluation challenges can really arise from these innovative approaches?
Well, good question. Very difficult question. So I shared a few of our grantees who are using AI. So I talked about Crop to Cash, who have the AI-driven machine learning, and then Communidad, which has the AI-powered early warning system app, and Hello Tractor, which does predictive modeling of tractor service demand. We also have other grantees who are using AI for other purposes. It could be AI for handling customer queries on climate smart advisory over the phone. It could be AI for analyzing satellite imagery for generating recommendations for soil health and regenerative agriculture. So lots of different initiatives going on, but the challenge that we have with evaluating this is that they are very early stage startups. So quite often during the course of the project, they are developing these AI initiatives. So to really understand the impact of these initiatives, it needs to be done over a longer period of time. So that's the challenge that we face at the GSMA. By the end of the project, these product services have not been out in the market for long enough to generate like a long-term feedback and gather insights for a long amount of time. But we see our role as supporting these startups to build and develop these solutions and get some early insight. So we treat the insights that we get as very early stage. So this is a snapshot of what's happening at the launch of the service or after 3 to 6 months. That might change later on. But yeah, that's, I think the main challenge is to do with the maturity of the startup, and it takes a while to understand the nitty-gritty of technology, and that can't be done within a short project time frame.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not something that you can do overnight. I think the importance of longevity is quite important. So I think I'll just pose another question to our speaker, to Timothy, so that maybe we can try to use this 30 minutes that's remaining, because I can see there isn't much on the Q&A so far. So Tim, I hope you are still there. So I do have like a quick one for you. So it goes. So Tim is the founder of Delphi Collective, and I know you're focused more on empowering organizations to learn and make informed decisions for positive environmental and social change. So how do you envision AI transforming the way we evaluate, the effectiveness of nature-based solutions and other environmental interventions, and of importance, the climate evaluations?
Yeah, it's a very tough question. To be honest, I don't know. So things have changed rapidly in the last 3 years. You only need to look at ChatGPT to see the advancements of it. There are studies, grants, universities that are conducting research on trying to understand where AI is going to take us. Never mind where it's going to take us for evaluations. I think based on some of the what I've been exposed to up until now, there are a range of really interesting applications that you can use AI for already that is not necessarily public knowledge or widely known. One of the other questions you were going to ask me, Kibiti, is what advice do we have for young and emerging evaluators? And I took some time over the last week to do some research into some of the AI technologies that I haven't necessarily used yet and haven't been aware of. And to be honest, I don't know where to begin because there's so many. But as a starting point, when we talk about evaluating climate and nature, there's usually a spatial and a temporal aspect to the data that we're analyzing, and you need to be able to visualize that data spatially. And software that's been used for more than a decade now, like QGIS and ArcView, have become really neat with adapting AI plugins that allow you to forecast what change may happen in the future based on a sizable data set. And I think that's already something that's being used by the likes of the World Bank and their lovely tools to use even for small evaluations, because as those data sets are already there for you to use and apply to a recipient group or a specific location. So that's really great, and I think that's something that's really beneficial. Something that I directly use quite often, or at least where I can when it's necessary. There's a lot of debates around whether or not we should be using tools like Atlas TI for their AI capability. So using large large documents, transcripts, 100, 200 pages, 300 pages that we would otherwise need to read through and code manually. Can we rely on tools like Atlas TI or ChatGPT to synthesize that data rapidly and quickly? And there was a recent study that was conducted by Matt McConaughey, who's based in the UK, and him and his colleagues compared the capability of Atlas TI to automatically code and make sense of transcripts versus the capability of ChatGPT versus the capability of a human as a baseline. And what they found, very interestingly, was that Atlas TI was not that great at AI, but the open AI plugin that we use for ChatGPT is far more accurate and it's actually quite reliable, which was very interesting because that's something that I've been, using at least to help me understand things a bit faster. But in saying that, I don't think we should ever underestimate the agency and importance of humans in troubleshooting and authenticating and validating the kinds of outputs that we get from AI. And to be fair, how well constructed those data sets are that we give to AI in the first place to analyze for us. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Tim, for that. I think you're really spot on. There are really tons of AI available now, but as humans, I think we should be mindful of which one should we use, when we synthesize data, so that we can actually have something that is credible. So I like that you have mentioned a lot of things, I like that. So without, I'll just pass on to the next speaker and ask him a few questions, Mr. Mudupi. So you mentioned that you have done a lot of work with Samia and also a lot of evaluation capacity building, especially within South African DPME. You are focused more on systems thinking and adaptive capacity. So I think one of the questions that I did have for you was like, so how can we really build the capacity of evaluators, especially the young people like us, young and emerging evaluators, so that we can actively integrate, generative AI into climate evaluations, particularly within like, government structures? Would you like me to start again? I'm sure I was so fast.
No, I think I got you.
Okay,
sure. That's a very tough but interesting question. That's a very tough but interesting and very valid question to ask. So, as I said to you, my point of departure is always let us not copy and paste paradigms, approaches, frameworks without contextualizing them in our African context. That is essentially where Made in Africa comes from. We cannot continue as the African people to always be embracing theories, approaches without making sure that they are not doing more harm than good. That is the first point of departure that we move from. So essentially, your question is how can then we build capacity of evaluators, especially young emerging evaluators, to integrate AI into climate evaluations within government? I think that's how I heard you. So if that is the case, then the premise we would move from is that any capacity building must be rooted in intentional investment, intergenerational learning, and African-led innovation, you know. So it must not move from the perspective that Africa is this dark place where there's nothing that we can learn from, you know, all we can bring is light into this dark place, that there's nothing that Africa can produce. No, that's not the premise that we must move from. So firstly, in terms of our approach would firstly say that let us decolonize training models. Let us shift away from externally designed M&E models. In essence, what are we saying? Let us develop curricula that centers African epistemologies, climate context, and social justice. You know, that those must be centered. Secondly, let us create mentorship pipelines. You mentioned that I was in SAMIA, South African Monitoring Evaluation Association. So let us strengthen platforms like SAMIA's Young Emerging Evaluators Initiative and Twendembele to link young evaluators with experienced mentors in both tech and policy domains. Thirdly, I would propose that let us look at how we can utilize digital, we can build digital and adaptive skills. How do we mean by that? Let us equip young emerging evaluators with training in AI tools. There's a variety, there's a whole host of them, as Mark said earlier. We have geospatial mapping, we have natural language processing, which I alluded to earlier. This YEs must be equipped with this whilst reinforcing value-based judgment in data interpretation. Because as you said, as the previous speaker highlighted, this AI tools, they are not value-free. We must always interrogate what values are being centered, what values are these AI models run on, because as we know, nothing in research or nothing in evaluation is value free. So we must always be careful and be aware of that. We must reinforce value-based judgment in that. Lastly, let's see, you spoke about how do we integrate AI into climate evaluations within government. So in terms of public sector integration, we must consider how we embed YEEs in government climate units through fellowships and secondments, where they can co-develop AI-informed climate M&E frameworks with public officials. So it was quite interesting that in the PhD that I'm doing, as I said, it's assessing evaluation capacity building at the Department of Planning, Monitoring, Evaluation in South Africa. One of the interesting interviews I had with one of the implementers at the DPMU was that I asked them, for example, what do they understand by evaluation capacity building? So they illustrated that they understand it, of course, as shoring up or building up the capacity of individuals to do evaluations. But then there was a follow-up question as to what about using evaluation? She said, no, evaluation capacity building is not about actually utilizing evaluations. But then the question is, what is the purpose of doing evaluations if evaluations are not being used instrumentally and conceptually to enhance policy making? So there should be this evaluation should be integrated, intertwined within the public sector policy cycle. Lastly, let's look at North-South reciprocity. How can we promote horizontal learning with other global South nations that are innovating in AI and evaluation, for example, Kenya and Ghana, rather than importing models wholesale from the global North that are perhaps not contextually resonant with our context here in South Africa or in Africa in general? So I'll stop there at this stage. But what essentially we're saying is that we are not antagonistic to Western-oriented evaluation paradigms or Western-oriented evaluation or ways of knowing, but let us embrace our own African-led initiatives as well. Thank you, sir.
Precisely so, Mr. Mudupi. I think you've really expanded more on that one. Thank you so much. I see the attendees haven't posted any questions. So I'll have another follow-up question for Tim. You can do it in brief, then I'll jump to Samir, then we'll close the session. So Tim, the question is, I think it's more like related to the one that Mudupi was actually talking about. So I think it's highly topical. So the question goes, how can we effectively engage young and emerging evaluators in leveraging AI tools for climate evaluations, ensuring that they are at the forefront of this evolving field and they actually, bring some fresh perspectives to the evaluations, the way they are conducted and managed? Hey, Tim, I'm not sure if you heard it. Would you like me to repeat again?
No, I heard it. It's all
Okay,
good.
thank you so much.
So there are a couple of simple ones. So I think that YEEs are actually at a bit of an advantage coming into M&E at sort of this stage, because there's so much innovation happening in AI and the kinds of tools that are being used. New ones are emerging that I think the younger generation will be able to deal with, will learn a bit faster about these technologies and use them to their advantage. I think that we should be encouraging YEs to join a community of practice that is related to AI and perhaps a just transition and climate. I know that there's a Miltech community of practice associated with Samir in South Africa, but there also are other communities of practice internationally that I think pretty much anyone can join. I think that's an important one because there are stalwarts in the field who have been around for a long time, who are at the cutting edge of M&E and AI, who you can be exposed to. And then I think we need to, this is not just for YEs, it's for ourselves. I think we have a habit of looking inwardly in M&E. We look at our own field and that's kind of our frame of reference. There is so much happening outside of M&E and AI in data science and other areas of research and other spheres of development, not only just in the global north, but also in the global south. And I think if we look outside of our own practice, there's a lot that we can learn from and adapt and apply to M&E practice. So that's something to, I think, consider and something to experiment with. There also are a lot of AI tools that are available for free. So that's not necessarily always a barrier. I would encourage all YEs just to keep on learning and to experiment and try new things. And then I think the experimentation part will also just help you with understanding what works well and what doesn't. And that's very, very helpful. Yeah, I think that's where I got to. I've already spoken about, the benefits of learning about QGIS and ArcMap. I would warn, though, that, climate evaluation or evaluations in climates is a niche area. So I think developing or learning tools, AI tools that can also be used in other kinds of evaluations would also be really helpful and to keep in mind, because there are a huge number of AI tools that can be used in climate, but not necessarily in too many other applications. So I'll be wary of that as well.
Yeah, definitely, Timmy. I like that you're mentioning the idea of learning as is with the field evaluation. We learn from the things that we are doing right and those that we are not doing very well, and we also look at other, other people, other organizations, other countries. So I think it's high time, young and emerging evaluators like us and even evaluators, I think it's actually important to learn, So the last question would be for you, Sami. I think you'll just be concise about it. Maybe you can say it in 2 or 3 minutes. So the question is, Sami, so how can digital tools and AI facilitate inclusive and participatory evaluation models in climate evaluation? You know, particularly with communities that your climate tech startups actually, you know, serve. I'm not sure if you like me to repeat again. Sometimes my voice becomes so clucky.
No, I'm just having a think about this. That
Okay,
question is
no
very
worries, no
complicated.
worries, no worries, no worries.
Um,
Took all the time.
yeah, so I think AI could be used in a few different ways to promote inclusivity in evaluation. So, but these I don't think are specific to climate. So it could be used to access more marginalized groups, like I mentioned, the IBR, AI being used to expand reach to different languages. Um, so that's more inclusive. It could also be used to try to remove any response fatigue and biases in analysis. Also, help with any analysis and visualization of data as well, uh, which could be then shared back to the community. So I think that's one of the challenges, especially budgetary constraints of how can we share evaluative insights back with community. So I think this could help with that. But I would echo what Timothy said. I also feel like climate, environment, and development evaluations, this sort of nexus is niche and also new. And then to add the layer of AI being new on top of this makes it very nascent sort of evaluation. So maybe we need to look to other um, uh, fields of evaluation and learn from them, and then also be mindful of what is specific to climate, and then what can also we learn from further advanced, I guess, evaluation fields and how they are using AI. So I think, yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, precisely so, Samir. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're about to come to the end of our presentations, and I would like to call upon the attendees to give a round of applause for our esteemed panelists. I'll start first by thanking Mr. Samir Hefif for availing himself for being here today. We really are feeling privileged to have you here on this session. And that goes out for you, Mr. Mudupi, also. Thank you so much for your time, for coming and contributing to this session. We really are, you know, very happy to have you here. And lastly, Mr. Timothy, thank you so much for all the insights that you have really contributed to this session. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say. I would say, I don't know if attendees do have like questions for you guys. Maybe they want to ask something before we end this event. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, may you please give a round of applause to the attendees and the panelists.
Thank you, Kipti.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Andisa,
Kibiti.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.